All right, so here on our panel, to my left, we have director Peter Ramsey. Peter has been with DreamWorks for a while. Before directing this movie, he directed the Monsters vs. Aliens Mutant Pumpkin Special, and he's also worked as head of story on Monsters vs. Aliens and Shrek the Third, storyboard artist on Shark Tale, and also he has a long career before coming to DreamWorks as a storyboard artist on movies like Adaptation, Minority Report, AI, Castaway, How to Train Your Soul, Christmas, Men in Black, you name it, Batman Forever. So we're very lucky to have him here. And right next to Peter, we have the producer extraordinaire, Christina Steinberg. She started DreamWorks with a B-movie that came out in 2005. She was producer of that movie. And before that, she had a long career as a live-action producer. She ran the company Junction Entertainment, produced movies such as National Treasure, The Kid, Instinct, and before that she was a senior VP of production at Touchstone Pictures. And last but not least, the lovely Nancy Bernstein. Before producing this movie, she was head of production at DreamWorks Glendale campus, and prior to that she was at Digital Domain, producing work for movies such as What Dreams May Come, I, Robot, so she probably worked with Scott before, right? And before that she was at Head of Digital Productions at RGA. So we're very happy to have him here to talk about this amazing movie that's going to be released in a few weeks. The film has already won a Hollywood Film Best Animated Feature Award, and it's generating a lot of great buzz, and we're very lucky to have him here. We're going to be very busy. It's previews and award mentions, and so we're getting them at a really good time, and they're very busy. Anyway, so without further ado, I'm going to start by having you guys talk a little bit about how each one of you got involved with the project. You know, kind of a little bit of the history of your involvement with the movie.
I first heard about the project in 2007 when I was just finishing up on B-Movie. And Bill Joyce, who is one of my heroes, and I have all his books that I've read to my children and grew up with them watching Roly Poly Oly. He had come to the studio and pitched the idea for Rise of the Guardians, and he had this big booklet Bible with him of all these beautiful drawings and this sort of reimagination of our childhood icons of Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny. And I was thinking about what my next project would be, and I heard about it, and I said, I have to work on this movie. This is the most amazing idea I've ever heard. So we sort of embarked on that journey in about early 2008 and started just talking about the characters, looking at character design, figuring out how to take all of this 20 years worth of imaginings and form it into a movie. And we did a little bit of work and then started looking for a director. And we met Peter, and he was amazing and had the best ideas and was as passionate about the project as we were, so he came along for the ride. Why don't you take it over from there?
Yeah, I had just finished. I just finished directing the Halloween TV special, The Monsters vs. Aliens, and it was kind of asking around for something to do. I'd heard about Guardians, I'd heard about the project, and I'd become pretty intrigued by it, and had actually been, kind of just totally on my own. I'd actually kind of discounted it at first. I thought, I don't know, messing with these kind of iconic figures, I mean, all the things that you would think, I'm gonna be on Fritos bag, Slurpee cups, and all this, the usual crap. But there was something about the idea that, you could treat them more as icons, more as kind of mythic figures, and thinking about them that way kind of led me to think just even more deeply about, the fact that when you're young, you actually believe in them, and that's a real thing. So that stuff, kind of against my will, I became really interested in the project. And kind of around the time that Christina and Bill and the other Bill were talking to David Lindsay of Bear, who became our writer, they approached me, and I was lucky enough that they thought that my ideas were kind of dovetailing with what they and David had in mind, and the general way that they wanted to approach telling the movie, and from there, like what, kind of late 2009, almost exactly 3 years ago, as a matter of fact. Almost exactly 3 years ago, and here we go today.
I was lucky enough to be head of production at DreamWorks Animation at the time, and so kind of knew where all the projects were in their early development and stuff, and had always said to build a mash, if ever I did produce anything, Guardians was the one that I'd be most interested in. I think just the notion of the characters and their worlds, and frankly, from my background of visual effects, the studio was really wanting a big, epic kind of production, you know, just not your mother's animated movie. And through the years, we had been building on that notion anyway, kind of starting with Kung Fu Panda and then going to How to Train Your Dragon. And this was kind of the next thought in that filmic evolution, if you were to kind of create. And when I read it and started seeing what Christina had been doing in development, and they asked me to come on because there was a big want, and I think frankly most others were afraid of it. And so, you know, tag, you're it, Nancy, is kind of how it goes over there. But it was it really is just an amazing opportunity to kind of take an animated movie to a whole different level. And you know, then when we brought Peter on, it was just perfect because we all do come from some sort of live action sensibility, and to us we really just wanted to make a great character driven epic adventure, and it happened to be animated, and so it was perfect for the three of us to kind of come together in that vision. So great.
Awesome. You guys pushed the envelope visually. Can you talk about some of the achievements? You know, I think Sandy is just amazing, the way you have pictures and the way you use 3D, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the visual aspects.
Yeah, I mean, and Nancy can speak to this even more than I can, but there was a lot of development by our head of visual effects, David Prescott, who I know has had a digital domain for a long time, and you know, done tons and tons of work. And, there's a lot of Sandman's dream sand effect, which is echoed in the evil version of that, Nightmare Sand, which also gets up to date for it. And that was a huge one for us. That was that was by far a big effect.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, the movie is chock full of effects. You know, I mean, the great thing that we got to do in this movie is, I don't know that really there's what you would call groundbreaking effects like we did. I was involved in Titanic and iRobot and you know, all of those fabulous, wonderful visual effects movies. I think the thing that really separates this movie though is the artistic achievement using visual effects. And so when you have a character like Sandy, it kind of harkens back almost to my days at our Greenberg Associates, where technology or the use of it grew out of the design needs. You know, so Sandy is this amazingly beautiful character that is a combination of Buddha and Harpo Marx. He doesn't speak, he communicates with his Sandy thought bubbles, and he's meant to look like candy almost. Marzipan, you know, is one of the things that we wanted him to look like. And so, you know, the technology that we used and we created was really existing. Like a lot of it was existing, not always to DreamWorks Animation. So we were able to kind of rework the pipeline to be able to use third-party software in a much more interesting way than we ever had in an animated movie, which was great. A big push that we did also was the skin for the characters like Jack and the kids and stuff, because and North, we wanted them to be grounded. You know, again, we were constantly on this road to belief, and when you have characters like the Tooth Fairy and Sandman and the Easter Bunny, and they're all so different, you know, you have to create a way of lighting them or grounding them in the real world so that you believe they could all be in a room together, you know. And so it's a little bit different than working in a visual effects movie where you start with something that's very real and you're just keep trying to make it look more real, you know, and push it into that box. What we were doing is really creating a fantasy world, but a place that you believed that you wanted to go. And each one of these characters has a visual effects component to them that actually makes up their character as well. You know, Jack can change the weather at any given time and make it snow, and so these things have to look believable. But I think that what really separates this movie is the artistic quality of the visual effects. You know, that we haven't seen in an animated movie, and don't see very often, I would say, in a live-action visual effects movie. You know, or I don't think they're as successful in making it beautiful, because we just have so much more leeway, you know, and we do abuse that, frankly.
Now, of course, the keynote speaker, Scott, was talking about the state of the visual effects industry before your panel. What is kind of your take on the whole big picture state of animation and visual effects as 2012 has been a great year so far as far as animated features and, of course, visual effects also. What is your take on it? Is it harder to work in animation now than when you guys started, or is it, what's your take on it? It's more competitive, certainly, right?
I think it's definitely more competitive. I mean, we all come from live action, but I think when I first moved into animation in 2005 around, it still felt like a smaller part of the industry, and people sort of felt like I was leaving and moving to Canada. You know, they didn't really understand why I was leaving live action. And I think right now it is at the forefront in terms of just movies. The studios all now desperately want to be in the animation business. A lot of other producers have moved over from live action. Not that we don't go back and forth, but I mean, there's a much greater interest. And I think not only from producers, but I think directors want to get into it, writers, actors, everybody now seems to look at it as an accepted and desirable medium. And I think any movie now you can make, there's a version of it that's a beautiful animated film.
I don't think that people always realize how hard it is to make an animated movie. You know, I think the kind of advantage that we have is that we boil it down to its simplest thing, which is the story and the characters, and then we let the movie kind of unfold from there. You know, I think that maybe a little bit what's gotten caught up in live action movies is the amount of effects and how big it can be, and you know, and I've worked in that world for more than I worked in this world, you know, so I understand it completely. But I think just from a pure movie making standpoint, they really should be kind of the same. It doesn't really matter how you go about making the movie, it's what's the best representation of that story and those characters at the end of the day. For us, you know, I hate to sound like I'm plugging DreamWorks Animation, but it deserves to be, because the great part about DreamWorks Animation is all the movies are different. We had a creative update the other day where we were looking out to the movies that are developed and being made through 2016. You know, these movies take 4 or 5 years to do. Every single thing is created. There's nothing that really exists. If it is based on a book or characters, they need to be reinterpreted. They need to live for at least 4 years until the movie comes out. So you can't be too in the moment, in a way. But I think that for us, what's cool is every movie is different, you know, and we're not trying to make the same movie or rip off of another movie that we already made. Obviously, we're trying to build franchises, you know, and create characters that people love. And it is a business, for sure, but they're expensive and it's hard. I think what's going on in the visual effects business is sad. I think it's been sad for a really, really long time, which is why I made the transition to get out of it, you know, and I did it for a long time. I worked for Scott for almost 10 years. I ran the feature film division at Digital Domain, which is an amazing company, doing amazing work. And it wasn't because of the work, it was strictly because of the business of it. And it was 2 parts.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to speak to whether it's gotten more difficult, more competitive. I mean, I'm relatively new to, you know, the game on this level. I've been a working stiff most of my career, most of my time at DreamWorks. But it, you know, from my vantage point, seems like things are kind of booming. I mean, it really seems to be exploding. And you know, mostly I'm looking at it from the studio point of view, but it seems like I can't remember too many other periods in my memory that there seems to have been such a big range of animated product that's like actually making it to the marketplace. And so in that way, it seems to be a great time. I don't know, distribution-wise and, those sorts of considerations, I can't really speak to, I don't really know, but I can't imagine too many other periods where it's been this vibrant,
Yeah, I mean, creatively, you just look over the last 4 months only, and you have from us, from DreamWorks, Madagascar 3, which is probably the best in the Madagascar series, I think. It's doing over $750 million worldwide right now. It's pretty huge. You have the, kind of critical success of Frankenweenie, which is really cool and unusual. You have Wreck-It Ralph, which is coming out, which is a completely different kind of movie. And you have Paranorman, and you have Rise of the Guardians, which is a totally different kind of movie yet again. And so I think that there's kind of a growth rate, and wide open.
And those are just the big ones. I mean, just as an art form, I just see stuff, you just go on the internet and there's amazing stuff all over the place.
Of course, a lot of people. On that note, I'll open the room for questions. You have wealth of experience, so here's your chance to tap their minds. Nothing? With that? Okay.
I'm amazed when you have that many characters that have their own world. How do you coordinate the teams and keep them all on that same train that's going towards the end? I mean, that must have been a difficult challenge to, do you have meetings weekly or daily?
Daily.
Daily. Wow. And how many hours a day did the average person that was working on this film spend? Was it
probably 10 hours a day on an average, I would say. We do come up with the rules. The rules of each character, the rules of their environments. How they move. It starts with the character. From the character is built the kind of world he would live in. That includes the textures and the shape language and the color language. You're well aware of that from the book. There's an art of book that we did that takes you through that, and we created these tapestries of each of the characters that talks about their shape language, their color language, their things that you don't necessarily aren't made a big deal of in the movie, but if you don't have them that ground each thing, then you don't know what these characters would say or do in a given place. And everybody is given those booklets, and everybody is encouraged to read that, ask questions, offer more suggestions, by the way, with this character. We're very open to receiving ideas, from the artist community. So, but then at the end of the day, you do need those grounding forces that hold it in place. Otherwise, it does go all over the place. And it is something we were a little worried about, having so many characters. And I mean, each one of these characters could be their own movie.
And they are, and each one is a Bill Joyce chapter book and a picture book and all of that, so.
No, and is there a thought for spinning off any of these characters into their own movie, or is there one character that really dominated?
I don't know, I think they sort of, what's wonderful is that they work together so well as a group, and it's really fun when they're together, and that sort of becomes the heart and soul of the film. So there's plenty of material and books that Bill has written. We'll just have to see if people love it.
That's a new idea too, them working together. I think forever we've known these characters kind of on their own, and I guess Bill Joyce's daughter once asked the question, does the Easter Bunny know Santa? And he was like, sure. And so that kind of inspired, would they work together? What did they do? So it's kind of the sum is greater than the individual parts.
You said 400 people worked on the film?
There were a total of 4 on the crew, not including technology and all business affairs and all of that, because the credits go on forever.
Or actors and musicians.
Yeah, but there are 445 on the actual crew.
Fax was all done in-house?
Everything.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Renee Hula. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. And my question is really, well, apart from the fact that I'm really excited to see the film, it just looks really epic. But can you, I don't know if you want to go into more detail as to more of the process of that 4 years, in terms of how long was pre-production and how long was actual production, and if you could kind of go into a little more detail in terms of that, and as well as, I've always wondered, how exactly do you fund something for 4 years and then have to, you know, distribute it afterwards and make back that money after the 4 years, you know, that, how exactly does that? You do this, I'm guessing studios, but I don't know if you could go into more detail into that.
Yeah, process-wise, let me see, when I came on October '09, some design work had been done, but, you know, like preliminary stuff, character designs and whatnot. The first stuff that started happening, we dug into script, dug into, you know, laying out the story, breaking down the story. On the same, you know, a lot of things happened in parallel. So we started designing, you know, we knew that pretty much no matter what direction we went with the script, we're going to show the North Pole, we're going to show everyone's environment, we knew which characters they were going to be. So we were able to start designing the world once we had our philosophy and our strategy, and that was happening at the same time that we were developing the story.
Casting, we started looking at
Casting.
the actors who we would like the voices to be. That's always a big part, and when you cast somebody, they start to inform a little bit more of the look and a little bit of the tone, and so that was happening at the same time too.
And we were pretty much boarding as we went along, you know, the script. So pages were being written, scenes were being boarded and reboarded, re-scrapped, you know.
And then our process in general there is that we work towards these internal screenings. So we board the script, we board the pages, we record the actors, and about every 4 months we put it up at the studio in front of the heads of the studio and the development people and our crew, and we all watch the movie and sort of
Cry
a little, laugh a little, try to figure out how to move it forward, and what sticks, what doesn't stick. And after that, we sort of go back, regroup, and rework some scenes, and we start that whole sort of development process over again of rewriting, reboarding, putting it up again as we're doing the art development and the character design and moving the worlds forward.
But we probably had like a year before we actually started animating.
Yeah, the full year.
We took a full year to develop the characters and build the characters. We actually went, on this movie, we tried to break the traditional animation kind of linear process and work in a more kind of circular way, especially in developing the characters in their worlds. And so we would develop the characters, and then in design and modeling, then we'd start to get a rig. We'd have always a rig record animator, lead character animator on the character to start to define the shapes of who they were, working with any kind of feedback we might be getting from the actors. And then, you know, kind of keep taking it back and refining it as we went along, trying to make the rigs as robust as we could. Sandy, for instance, we came up with the notion that he kind of had his own kind of gravity, and Peter really wanted Jack Frost to be kind of a rebel without a cause character, you know, James Dean, and we assign, you know, we do a lot of research into actors, what traits we might want to pull from them. We just start to figure out who they are, and then give that, then they go through there, he starts to get ideas, and we get ideas back from him. We just kind of build it all into this fateful day when all the people turn up and we start really working on it. You know, and all the while we're making schedules and developing effects, actually, developing the sound stream effects and nightmares and frost effects.
Yeah, but really after that pre-production, and I call it pre-production, both
Right.
like,
Yeah.
but once we actually start animating, the train's going, and it's like
Yeah,
there's no
we're
turning
ready.
back, because animation has to feed lighting and effects, and everybody down the line is kind of waiting, and you're just running, man. You're just
The
running.
2-year race.
Yeah.
There's never enough time.
You guys all have live action backgrounds, right? So I've done that transition before myself. I've done that transition myself from sort of live action to sort of the full animation thing, and going into it I was like, oh, I got this, and then it was like, oh wow, this is a really different world. How did you guys feel? Did you guys have that sort of same epiphany, and kind of piggybacking on that, like how much do you think that live action background helped in making a richer movie, or did you kind of have to peel some of that away that was getting in the way?
I'd say for me, especially the last couple of things you said, both. Because I'd been a storyboard artist coming up, so that was my grounding was always kind of just basically visual storytelling, shot composition, blocking, all that kind of stuff. And I think it really helped because, I mean, for this film in particular, but I also think for the latest couple of generations of CG films, I mean, they do feel that live action is the language that they kind of speak. And a lot of people, there are, people's backgrounds vary. A lot of people, like people who've historically been in animation, maybe they come out of TV or their grounding's really in 2D. And there's things about the way they work that maybe hasn't translated as well to handling some of the handling all the demands of staging a movie like this. I'm not saying that no, obviously I'm not saying no, but it definitely helped me to be able to wrap my head around the scope of this, and also how to direct the eye, how to keep things moving. Lots of stuff that, the studio did specifically want to have like a big, epic kind of hybrid-y, live-action-y feel. And I felt that was kind of right for the story too. So that was kind of a happy coincidence. But yeah, really coming to animation. Actually, the thing that struck me the most is how little difference there is once you get down to the story level.
Yeah.
I mean, because once you do that, there's no difference at all. The characters still have to have motivations, they still got to hit certain kinds of beats, the story's got to move in a particular way. I guess the only other thing that I would say is learning how to make a movie at the studio. Because an animated movie, for those of you who know, there's a pretty specific way that it goes, the pipeline. You've got to learn the pipeline, and that was kind of a new concept for me. And even going through this whole movie, I feel like, okay, I really kind of, by the time I'm finishing now, I'm like, okay, I think I get it. But it's a different beast, to really know how to drive it it's a real particular skill.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think live action and animation, it's about the story, it's about the characters. So there really is no difference in terms of that and the development of the movie. But yeah, the pipeline is a very different thing. In live action, you get the studio to greenlight your film, and then you go away and you make it, and then you come back a year later and show them what you have. And it's been a year away from them without them being sort of with you every day. In animation and in DreamWorks, I think it's definitely you're on the studio a lot, so you were very much intertwined with them, and they are very much a part of your daily existence, which has its pros and cons.
Have you taken out your chip yet?
We tried to fly under the radar as long as we
for a little
could,
bit.
and then all of a sudden I was like the Eye of Sauron was
Yeah.
on us.
But I think one thing that is pretty cool about this movie, because we all do come from a live action background, is that it does look very different to me than any other animated movie I've seen, and I'm really proud of that. And I think we all sort of came at it with such fresh eyes that we didn't, character design, we're like, sure, these look great, and we love what we're doing here, and it doesn't have to look like something you've seen before. And tonally, I think it feels a little bit different and a little more like a live action film, too, as Peter was saying, in terms of just camera and focus.
But at the same time, I would stress that it is 100% completely animated. There's no motion capture data of any kind, and I feel like the performances, specifically of all the of all the main characters, when you look at them, Shannon, all of their, we worked a long time on giving with our animators on giving them all real personalities in their movement, and that's real animation. You know, it's the real deal. So.
I think the other thing that we were able to do was on this movie, we really worked to try to change the process. So, you know, speaking to what you're saying, again, animation has traditionally been a very linear process. Things go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And while we do have that pipeline that we have to kind of follow along, what we did a lot was we tried to break those walls down and encourage the downstream departments to come forward to understand where the movie was headed in an effort to be able to put more and more into the film. And so there, in some ways, crew-wise and leadership-wise, it echoed a live-action movie in many ways, where the visual effects supervisor, production designer worked very closely together, the head of character animation, you know, everybody was kind of like in it together from the beginning. And, you know, we just felt that that was really important, because because the movie you couldn't just throw it over the fence. You know, you really people needed to understand so that we could solve problems, you know, all the way down the line as we went along. So we used a lot of live action ideas. You know, we did have a motion capture stage, but it was mainly used just prior to layout for us, and in order for Peter to be on the stage with the head of character animation, with layout, with visual effects, talk about where the lighting was going to, basically this choreography, you know, of where things might go, and the number of characters we had, you know, scale issues, because the characters are all very different sizes and how
Flying.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit in there, you know, so it was just, you know, so that helped us to, those kinds of live action techniques, if you will, while we didn't use them for the same end result, what it did was get us all in a room together talking about the movie, about actual pieces of the movie, which often in animation you don't have. It just kind of winds up on your desk. And I think in that sense, we work very differently. And I think our experiences in live action allowed us, it was very natural to us. So it became then, in an extension, very natural to our crew, who it was new for, but they loved it, actually. So, cool.
How are we doing time-wise? We have time? A couple more questions? Oh, yeah. Okay, one more.
Yep. Hi guys,
Yeah.
Troy from Sacktoons in Australia. Great to see you casted in Australia. Do you have your next projects lined up individually that you're going to work on next?
No, we don't.
No, we still got
How do we
We're
pitch
waiting
your
on
ideas?
November
We still
22nd.
can't let this one go. We don't know yet, but we're excited about many options.
Hi. Just to spin in I believe this is more like a production question, but I would like to know, do you have a separate pipeline for marketing purposes? I mean, to sell that movie? You do have a pipeline for production, and you do have to be, you know, taking good care of the movie, but then you also have to sell it, and you also have to, you know, market it. And do you have a separate pipeline, a different team, or how does it work?
No, it's really, I mean, we've tried to use all of our materials that are from the movie, so there's really not that much that's custom. And if there is anything, it goes through our pipeline, and we try to just fit it in on the schedule at the last couple of months of the schedule. But for the majority, they're really using the materials that we've made from the film.
Some movies are different. For us, and Christina was amazing at this, of getting involved. I mean, some of the movies at DreamWorks, especially the franchises, you know, the second or third, it's easier for marketing to just kind of run with it. They know the characters, they understand their arcs and everything. We were concerned, and Christina was just all over this, it was great, you know, that this particular movie could be sold in a different way, and maybe not the appropriate way for what the movie was, and so she stayed incredibly involved with all the marketing, so that we could stay true to the movie. And in an extension, what we did was able to find little holes to be able to produce that stuff that we needed to, because, you know, the truth is the marketing is the first thing anybody ever sees. And if it's not as good or better than the movie, then we're really not doing it those 4 years of any kind of service, you know. So we were pretty careful about that.